Senator Murkowski is pushing back on that. We need more people to push back on that, because at the end of the day, when that ruling came out, nobody ever asked, how's it going to affect the aviation community in Alaska? And I think it'll have dramatic impact on the way that you guys live. Because you guys fly airplanes like we drive cars in the lower 48. So that's the reason we're here. We want to partner with the AACA, and together we'll have a stronger voice. I hope you enjoy your lunch today. It was a pleasure. We're excited to be here, and I look forward to meeting and talking to more of you as time goes on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith. We are really excited about that partnership. Please expect more details from us soon as to what you can expect from that relationship. So this next conversation that we're going to talk about continues our theme of advocacy. We are, as I'm sure you are all aware, very closely monitoring the issue of the rewrite of Title IV that pertains to common carriers transporting alcohol. So I invited Joan Wilson, the director of AMCO, the Alcohol Marijuana Control Office, to speak with us today. And she very generously offered to have a conversation with everyone. So I would like to invite Joan up to the stage, and if you would all welcome her, please. You can go wherever you want. Yep.
And what am I going to point at, sir?
That's forward. That's back.
All right, this one's forward, or this one?
This is a laser pointer.
Okay. Got it. Well, who would have thought the director of AMCO had to come talk to the Alaska air carriers? I didn't, because I'm getting to a specific screen here. All right, I inherited SB 9. Do folks know what SB 9 is? That's the Title IV rewrite. This bill has been in before the legislature for 10 years. Prior to being the director, I was the Assistant Attorney General who advised AMCO, the ABC Board, and the Marijuana Control Board for about 2 years. So been in the field close to, almost coming up on 5. And over that 5 years, I was basically told, this is a deal, there's no changing it, especially that last session. And what you found was actually 3 interests coming together and often reaching a compromise against the interest of their own stakeholders so this bill could pass. Those 3 interests included CHAR, which are your representatives of your bars and your restaurants and your tourism industry, the Brewers Guild, representative of all the manufacturers, and Alaska's recovery community because of the impact of alcohol abuse in our state. And I really think we are here because of the strong voice of the recovery community, and with perhaps not enough outreach to the carriers, because how many of you knew about SB 9 and that it might impact your business? Hands? Okay. That shows a disconnect. People not thinking about you in the stream of commerce, yet creating a new regulation that now impacts you. So let me go backward. I got it? Am I going the right way? What's your name? Huh? Peyton. Hi, Peyton. I'm Joan. Nice to meet you. This is a long presentation. I don't want it to be a long presentation because what I want to do is talk to you about solutions. So the SB 9, the statute, requires common carriers, a defined term, that transport a defined term, alcoholic beverages, in 2 ways, and we'll talk about those 2 ways, to register with AMCO, Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office, and have that registration approved by the ABC Board. What are the 2 ways? If I own Brown Jug and I want to ship direct to a consumer in a town that does not have local option, can you give me one, Gabriel? Can you think of one? Fair? No, Anaktovik, is that what you said? Well, I want a town with a liquor store. Can you think of? No, okay. Fort Yukon. All right, let's go Fort Yukon. I'm a package store and I receive an order from a customer, a written order in Fort Yukon for 4 bottles of wine. She doesn't drink that much. That package store has to get something called a shipping endorsement that permits the shipping direct to the consumer. And a requirement of that shipping is that the package store only use registered common carriers. That's one. The other licensee that is required to use you are something called the manufacturer direct shipment license. So your wineries in California, your distilleries in Kentucky, and now your breweries in Anchorage. They didn't have this right before, but if they want to ship a product direct to consumers, they also must utilize an approved common carrier to provide that alcohol. I'm going to be talking about common carrier registration, but do we have anyone that actually has a common carrier dispensary license in the room? That is, you run a plane or a boat that you serve alcohol to your passengers? Okay, nobody here. But that's a separate kind of license. That's a license that impacts the licensed premise of the plane. Your plane is not a licensed premise. So here's the statutes we're going to be talking about and regulations. And I just want to walk you through the one that's our concern. I'm going to go through every single letter. So I think we get to K. All right. What does ASO 409-750 require? It requires the ABC board to approve a common carrier to transport and deliver alcoholic beverages to a person within the state. We better talk about what it means to transport and what it means to deliver and what it means to be a person. Hold off on that. ASO 409-750B, the board will prescribe a form to apply to register and shall approve applicants, not even a may, shall approve applicants that meet the requirements of C and D. Gabriel Gonzalez here of our office and Jane Sawyer and Christina Sherezhnikoff worked really hard to come up with a form that we thought worked for all of you. We actually did have a couple meetings. But that form is approved by our board and on our website to apply to be a registered common carrier. What must that common carrier promise? That they will deliver alcoholic beverages only to a person over 21 who signs for the order and acknowledges receipt, and that common carrier agrees to make those records available to the board, and the board could even require periodic reporting. By the way, it hasn't done that yet. E, the board and AMCO will maintain a list of approved common carriers. Are those on our website now? Okay. What? 11 of them, and are they on the front page? Maybe we'll show them in a little bit. And if you are one of the 6 common carriers that have an application that not yet approved, they're on my desk, and I'm hoping to get to them later today. So it might very soon be 17. We will maintain and publish the list. And the reason we publish it is because our package stores and our manufacturer direct shipment licensees need to know who to utilize. F, the board has the authority to remove carriers who we determine don't comply with C and D. G, definitions. What's a common carrier? It means a motor vehicle, watercraft, aircraft, or railroad car available for public hire to transport freight or passengers. Here's our first reference to passengers. How is that going to impact baggage? Let's just think about that for a second. Hold off on that too. Transport. Transport means to ship by any method and includes delivering or attempting or soliciting to deliver or transfer alcoholic beverages to be shipped to, delivered to, or left for pickup or held for pickup by any person. There's that word person again. H, if you are a common carrier that transports alcoholic beverages in violation of this requirement, you're called an unapproved common carrier, and the fine is called, commits the offense of unapproved common carrier transport or delivery of alcoholic beverages. If you are approved, but you somehow violate the requirements of C of D, you could commit common carrier noncompliance. The fine for being unapproved is $500, and the fine for making an error is $250. All right, I'm not going to talk much about local option communities. I just put this in the PowerPoint because it impacts you if you are shipping to them, because I think the larger issue we want to talk about is this common carrier registration. Okay. So here's what we did, and here's what we're going to do. As I mentioned, we inherited SB 9. That bill passed in June of 2022, I think a month after I took this job. The legislature gave us 1.5 years to implement. And that implementation included creating many new license types, endorsements, rewriting all of our regulations, rewriting all of our citations, training. I feel like I'm forgetting any things. Oh yeah, creating a new online licensing system. January 1 was our target date, and because that's the effective date of the bill, and I think we did a pretty good job of meeting that. Side note, let's talk about how we could have done better with common carriers. We did, however, have this thing I used to call WWW, Wednesdays at 1 for 1, where we would reach out to groups impacted by this legislation. We had 1 or 2 for common carriers. So we had 1 for package stores, and those package stores identified the common carriers that they utilize. That's why some of you may not have known about our work sessions. And then we notified Gabriel notified folks regarding our training session, and that training session it raised a lot of questions. And the board met last week, and when they raised it, even a lot more questions. So I want to talk to you about those questions, give you the lay of the land, and then figure out what the remaining ones are. We then posted our form online. We notified package stores and direct shipment licensees of its availability of approved common carriers because we did not want to shut down commerce in Alaska. The board gave me interim approval to approve any any application that met the requirements of C&D. I think we approved 6 by January 1st. We then started getting phone calls. Who? Yes. And Will, and who else? That's other Grant. You're Grant, right? Okay. Remind me again. Dan. All right. Which taught us a lesson. Common carriers did not know about this law and this requirement. If we were to go back, I think we'd probably meet with you, Will, and talk about earlier implementation. That's why this is where we are now. So lots of questions in that phone call. I gave my interpretation of some of the answers to those questions. We then had a meeting of the ABC board last Monday, Tuesday. The board heard from a number of you and wants to form a stakeholder group to answer some of these outstanding questions. So here's what the board directed. All right, I am flying to Seattle, and I'm bringing my favorite Moose's Tooth Fairweather IPA in my luggage so I can provide it to my good friend. My baggage goes on the plane. I collect it in Seattle. That is not, even though there's a huge words such as transport in person, that is not a transaction that requires a common carrier. You probably already are a common carrier, but you have no obligation to get my signature, when I pick up my bag. Or suppose my bag goes halfway around the world and comes back. That's a lost baggage. That's no different. So no obligation for that kind of transaction. The other thing, you have a 19-year-old that works on the taxiway, and a crate of alcohol comes off of that and needs to get to your warehouse or wherever the passenger or the customer is going to pick up the alcohol. No problem. that person doesn't need, you don't have to hand off to someone over 21 in order to hand off to the customer. There was another part of that, you guys, regarding 21-year-olds. Oh, you're working in the warehouse, someone's coming to pick up their alcohol. They do not have to be 21 to deliver it to the customer. That's the other advice. Example we got, UPS ships alcohol to Dillingham intended for a customer in Port Moller. UPS doesn't fly to Port Moller, right? I'm just assuming, so they hand off that package to, who would go to Port Moller here? Anyone? Grant? All right, Grant would go. Who has the obligation to be the approved common carrier? Because the only thing that matters with the common carrier is delivery to the passenger. I mean, to the customer. And that seems to be the second tier of the delivery. But how does Grant Aviation even know that this package is coming from the winery in California that UPS used? What the board is recommending is that the entire chain of commerce register to be approved common carriers. Now, that doesn't mean they may not revisit that question. I missed a lot of that discussion. Does anyone have input? I'm looking at my office as to why they reached that decision.
So the question was for the initial mainline carrier, because that terminology, first carrier, transports it to the bush, and then we engage a second carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Does there have to be a second carrier individual receiving the package from the first carrier? Does that second carrier employee have to be 21 years of age?
They do not, but they do need to be an approved common carrier. So there's no signature requirement, no maintaining of records, but whoever employs that 20-year-old needs to be approved to then take that alcohol to its next destination. That's the advice the board got. Customer. Yes. Throughout the whole system. And by the way, this is guidance from the board. And what's going to happen with the stakeholder group is we're going to come up with regulations stating that this is how it works. And with regulations, lots of public comment. If we get something wrong in draft, it'll get approved. And the goal really is not to create liability for you all, but to just prove the way of compliance and answer these questions. Transport does not mean it's in your in my baggage. Person does not mean a licensee. It only means a direct to consumer.
In that scenario that they just mentioned, so the mainline carrier's responsibility ends at the transfer point, but they maintain responsibility to make sure that the second carrier, the downline carrier,
Is
an
it
approved carrier.
right?
So, for example, Everts sends a shipment
Mm-hmm.
to market St. Mary's, and granted the downline carrier, we are not approved, therefore they cannot do it.
Right. Let me say this, though. That's the board's guidance. There's nothing in statute that requires that. It is possible that Everts could provide the alcohol to you, Grant, and Grant is then in the situation where if they're not an approved common carrier, yeah, they could face some concern, but nothing in the statute or the regulation says you, initial common carrier, must do this. This is what the board is recommending, and our hope is, what is the fee for a common carrier, $12.50? Yeah. Oh, we had another questions about employees or agents in villages and whether they need to register separately. We can talk about that one too. But yes, the guidance is if you're going to hand off, check the website or call AMCO or ask whoever's receiving it if they're approved. Question back there, sir? Okay. Mhm.
Where's the liability? Is it on us as a carrier, or is it on the original shipper that knows it's going to a galvanized roof? Why is it?
So it's on the shipper in that case. Technically, when you do a handoff, you have no liability under Title IV. Yep.
Carrier and it's going to redirect alcohol
Mhm.
to Jan and his team.
Yep. Dan might claim lack of knowledge. You know, I didn't know what was in that package. I didn't know I have this obligation. But you, under the statute in the reg, you have no liability because what it governs is your obligation is to the consumer. Shipping, a package store that has a shipping endorsement that didn't make sure the entire line of commerce was coming has a violation of their shipping endorsement. Direct manufacturers who don't use an approved common carrier have a violation against their license.
When we had that meeting with the board, that was one of our recommendations was getting together with the stakeholders.
Mhm.
You really expect that to occur?
2 weeks, is that what we said, Jane? We're trying to get over some of our workload from the meeting, but we want to get it scheduled within 2 weeks.
I know there were some of us that were involved in that, but wanted to make sure that we were involved in that stakeholder meeting and that. So I think those notices need to go out and probably within this board, people that want to be involved.
We'll get the notice to you and you can share with everyone. And if there's dates and times that don't work, we're flexible. Gabriel, you had a list though, didn't you?
I do. I have Dan, Joan, and Justice Always, I believe his name was. So with Ryanair. Yes, those were the three that we had identified, along with our 2 board members.
And I don't have an objection to how big it is. It's a user group to help the director. It's not considered a board meeting. At all times, we do treat it as subject to the Open Meetings Act, so we always advertise it, record it, and post it. So that discussion will be available. So did that answer your remaining question? Okay. One other situation, can't remember which airline talked to us about this. It might have been Grant. The requirement is delivery to the customer. So there's really no leaving the alcohol unattended on the runway. Someone's got to pick it up. And suppose you have a person there who spending $1,250 to be an approved common carrier is a lot of money. You can call those individuals your agents. They may be your employees, that solves it. But if they're part of your transaction, they can be part of your common carrier approval. Downside of that, you're responsible for their actions. But I don't know, $1,250 can be burdensome. Is it a one-time fee? Yeah, one-time fee, no renewal. If you make errors, we can request the board to, take action against the approval. Sir. Mm-hmm.
Typically what happens is that plane goes in, drops everything off the agent, then takes it, delivers everything right away. What is the agency's timeframe when documents are signed and actually available? Is it immediate or is it some?
There's some time, yeah. Yeah. We can create that in regulations, but we have to recognize the reasonableness. It's, I don't need it shot to us right away. And initially, I'm going to advise the board, I don't think we're at a point of periodic reporting. I think we're at the point of implementing this. So what is the goal of this? That's what I always think about. What's the goal of this registration? To me, it's to ensure kids don't get alcohol. That's if you have to be over 21, you don't even have to be the person on the consignee. You don't have to be the person to whom it's intended to go. So I can't think of any other purpose of that registration. Yes, sir.
I think what it misses is the reality for a lot of these, especially the smaller communities, that one, do not 100% sure that he's going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Two, right now at least, it's acting in a certain way where if it's not acting properly, you won't make it. They're out, they know, they do this, they're generally not. But
Right.
So having a paper trail seems like it makes logical sense, but the reality is it's very difficult. What will happen is that these things won't get happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're just like will go up 100%. That's what's going to happen. Everything will be complete. A lot of us downline carriers
Talk to me more.
improve.
Yeah.
And we have perfectly communities that are perfectly legal that have alcohol now are going to find privilege. They might not necessarily
Have you? Yeah.
line in for us just to get
Right. Right. Uh-huh.
the villages that legitimately get a case of beer don't get beer, they get out of the carry. So we're
Right.
in the middle. They're not calling the BBC or
I'll be, yeah. And you know, it's one of those best intentions. Like, I used to be a real big fan of dry communities, letting local options choose. But then I see what happens to the towns around them that aren't dry, and then I see what people actually consume in the dry communities that would, you know, rot their stomach and their eyes. So I'm not sure dry communities are the right idea. Um, be- yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got it. Sir.
So I work for security aviation. We're a charter only operator, and we do a lot of support for like our defense long range radar guys. We're flying stuff out to 4 people. They're out there for 6 to 8 weeks sometimes.
Wow.
And so a lot of times they'll bring their own personal alcohol and something else in the baggage because
Mm-hmm.
like it. But if somebody was to drop off alcohol to ship out to one of these things, I think right, this applies to that scenario because we are now carrying the alcohol without the
Right. So it depends on who's dropping off that alcohol. It's the obligation of the package store and the direct shipment manufacturer. We're looking at Gabe. Or to your spouse who's working the remote site. I want to go back through the board on that just to verify, but again, it's the obligation of 2 entities to utilize these. Could we read that very broad language of 750 and say, yes, it does apply to that? I don't want to start applying it to that until we get guidance from the board. Yeah. Sure. Oh, I apologize. Yeah. Security aviation is serving a remote work site. An employee is out there for 6 months. They ship, when they go out to the site, 6 months is a long time, but I'm just going to say that. Their baggage includes alcohol. That doesn't require a common carrier approval. However, about 3 months in, they realize they're out of their favorite Cabernet. So they call their wife and they say, hey, can you deliver this package of wine to Security Aviation and get that to me? Is that transaction one that Security Aviation must be an approved common carrier to deliver? My assertion is no, because it's the obligation of the package store and the direct manufacturer shipment licensee to utilize the approved common carrier, not the individual. My other thing is, I could be completely wrong on that because the statute can be read to cover that transaction. I'm not going to start out enforcing it that way. If it gets enforced that way, it's going to be with knowledge and understanding and a regulation that says that. Go ahead. Well, how do you want me to fix it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
shipping all the time. It is a huge battle. We have law enforcement at our facility multiple times a week. They're seeing these shipments. We have a lot of drama. And
Well, I could interpret it that way to require it.
that's going to create a job for someone in Anchorage Ferry just to be an expediter, go buy liquor.
You don't think that's already happening? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a question, I feel like back to your original point, I think that the goal is to, keep liquor out of villages that shouldn't have it, or keep kids from getting it. So when somebody calls Brown Jug, what is their, like, how do they know?
Okay, so Brown Jug has to check something called our written order database. And that database tracks the amount of alcohol that goes to that person per month. It looks at, yeah, and if suppose they use 3 different package stores, it tallies all of that. If they are a restricted purchaser for some reason, bootlegging is a big one. The shipment cannot go to that individual. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing to know about the manufacturer direct shipment license, so I'm a winery in California, and what's a community that permits importation of alcohol but doesn't allow for stores? Bethel. Okay, so Bethel allows for importation of alcohol, but no stores that can have them. That's still called a local option community. It doesn't matter if it still permits importation. Manufacturer direct shipment licensees cannot ship to any community, any zip code that has exercised any level of local option. You want me to say that again? Mm-hmm.
They come over to our warehouse, pick it up, bring it to a building, then people will pick it up. We have that license in
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's trying to duplicate it as far as the.
Yeah, right. I think a big key of this is it's primarily going to be operational in this new environment of non-local option communities that don't have those community delivery sites. So, here's how I interpret law, and I hate bad government. I've hated it my whole life. So I like being in a position to be responsive, to be good government, to let people know what the expectations are. And if things are ambiguous, I go in favor of the person with the burden. So that's why I stated, I think this is primarily an obligation of a package store and a manufacturer direct shipment licensee. It doesn't apply to the person, delivering to their spouse. I could argue that it does if you want me to do that.
The problem is, you don't want to do that, but if something happens in that village and from that shipment and becomes political,
Mm-hmm.
then they're gonna go to language defense.
And they'll go to me, and then I'll lose my job. Yeah.
It might
Mm-hmm.
go around,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah.
we have to be cautious of that.
Right.
Transport is transport.
Mm-hmm.
Define it.
Right.
You define as delivery. The other big hole in your part of the problem is that the person that made the order does not be the person receiving it
Right.
in 21. So they can just have anybody that's in 21
Uh-huh.
as the designated receiver.
Yep.
And all these kids could be getting.
And just so there are, under the manufacturer direct shipment license, there are limits to how much you can ship, but exactly. There's no limits to how many manufacturers I can utilize. I can only get so much from one, but nothing prevents me from getting 80. Bad solution to a problem, right? Hand back there. Mm-hmm. Okay. But you need consistency, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Can I ask you one question? Did the board talk about this issue at all? No. Okay, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
The second one is, in the statutes and the way it was written, it only has to be delivered to someone over 21.
Right. Let me go back.
So what we're saying is, as long as the person that picks it up is over 21, does not have to be the constable, is that correct?
Correct. 21 who signs for the order and acknowledges receipt. That's it. Yep. No, I hear you. And your question does disturb me. I don't like causing social ills. So, no, that's all right.
What we deal with all the time. So individual spouse and friends, they still have to, when they come to our counter, they still have to mark and label.
Okay. Even though our statute, yeah, doesn't require it.
If they're bootlegging and freight and we know it, well,
Mm-hmm.
we have to intercede.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, we don't try out. And they get real crafty.
Would it help to, I mean, so let's say that we do require it, and the requirement is that the person who signs off has to be over 21, doesn't even have to be the consignee. Would that help with the problem? It is? Okay, so, I mean, I'm trying to think of the bootlegging's perspective. I was thinking of a remote work site, not a community. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Dan, wouldn't you agree that it's even problematic to get a signature and an ID because of all the things that pilots can be doing?
Mm-hmm.
They're the person that's going to have to check somebody's ID. Everybody's going to love that.
40 below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check an ID, write it down. I mean, just to, I mean, we have pilots way over that stuff.
If you think about worst case scenarios, and you're trying to make sure somebody's on the ground that's over 21.
Right, and that it's not sitting on the runway, right?
It's not
Left.
sitting on the runner.
Yeah.
You're calling into the community saying, this is an alcohol flight. I mean, what's the risk of putting our pilots at just announce to the community, this is one of the flights that has alcohol on it? So you can make sure somebody's on the ramp. Somebody will be there. Somebody will be there.
Yeah. So, I inherited a problem, but we're gonna get a solution. I mean, that's that's my commitment to you. Yeah, yeah. We're having this meeting in 2 weeks. I think we need to make it like a half a day, just based on the discussions, because I think I want at least 2 members of the board, even though it's not a board meeting, to weigh in on this question. Hi, Lee. Okay. What do your people in those 72 communities think? Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Alcohol poisoning, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Their snow machine's gonna break down, yeah.
That's number two, because of bootlegging, which has rapidly become a serious loss of business for the last bottle where I'm from was $60. Now a bottle is $100.
Where are you from? Okay.
If you go to a town outside of that, I'm not going to take rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
It went from $200 to $400. Increase, watch 5 guys. Sparkling apple cider, right? Like all you got to do that. Everybody knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sucks, but that's how we grew up. Actually, right? And so what happens now is when another irrational will happen or an accident, where something can happen. And civil lawyers will look at that and say, oh, I'm a carrier, speed is deep, it's $1 million, right? The insurance is having $1
Mm-hmm.
million. They go sue the common carrier for not getting signature because the pilot will not get signature. Can't take your gloves off.
No, I hear you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this law is reinvigorated movement.
Yeah.
It's rapidly increased base marijuana in Berkeley. That's another problem because you don't have easy access to
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So you go to the next, and that's going to
Have you guys met with the governor's office yet on this? No, okay. All right, well, I meant,
But, so those are the liabilities,
mhm.
right? And the alcohol aspect really, but all the onus is on that glass barrier. This really has to switch to a community problem. And if a community votes to be right,
Mhm.
that's their choice. If they vote down, that's their choice. Let their choice. Put on that. But we have to say we need a distribution center, not just put it on a carrier. We already have a regulation. Yeah. We don't want to.
So if, yeah,
So let's
right.
focus on hazmat and get that signature. Do it for.
So a solution is to mandate community delivery sites for every wet, damp, I'm asking. What,
Don't put it on the barrier.
yeah.
We're not gonna hear this. You got a problem.
Mhm.
It's easy whenever it's an app.
Mhm.
Walk into a nice building, it's an expert.
Yeah.
You know, they might even have someone try getting an ID at Apple. Try it for somebody who's never been angry.
Yeah.
Don't have that. There is no ID. So that's a
Uh-huh.
huge problem. So until those items are handled, areas like that are not.
Yeah.
Aaron, Ryan, all of us that apply to the village where we're from, we literally cannot.
So maybe this new law is doing a good thing and stopping the shipment of alcohol to small communities. I mean, because you're afraid. Yeah. They'll go another way.
It gets to the hub,
Okay.
and then the bootleggers come in and they'll, pull community stuff.
Mhm.
This is exacerbating a huge tentacle. Because now they're taking money that's for food and other bills, obligations, and now they're spending it more on alcohol. They had a budget of $60, and now they're spending $200.
Is it all because of the common carrier approval?
Yes, it is.
That's, help me with that, with that part. Okay, because no common carrier will carry it, so they use the bootlegging. Yeah, okay. All right,
So it's kind of like the exact opposite of what's going on in the nation with marijuana, or if you're in Portland or Oregon, you do whatever you want. You know, they say it's the exact opposite of that. You're re-regulating it, so you're making it illicit.
so if, what would be a solution to make common carriers be willing to register, take you out of the law? No ASO 9?
Sender and the receiver. Because otherwise, we're gonna be taking stuff either way, but that box is not gonna be marked.
The ABC board requires. Mhm. Gabe, could you invite Senator Michicki to this user group? Did anyone talk to him when this bill was in process? I mean, he still has a lot of ownership over it, and also invite Anna Brawley or Tiffany Hall. Yeah. Two hands, go for it. Yeah, one hand, okay. Oh, Mike, good.
Just because people online can't hear and they're
Oh, she had
complaining.
another baby, yeah, but, yeah, yeah.
So
Tiffany.
just for the registration side, I
Okay.
think that the board and yourself need to make sure that it's real clear to anyone that does move forward with this and registering as common carriers in a couple aspects is the registration permits require us to list areas that things are stored.
Right, some of you don't
Which,
store.
but
Yeah.
those now have
Yeah.
gone in, and this was the concern that I brought.
Yeah.
You guys need to look at this from a very serious aspect, and there's some people in here from the feds, and that today is, those SIDA areas are secured areas and are not supposed to be out for public
Right.
output, information. So, but now they are a public record.
Could you hit that link?
So through public access to documents, those could become available, and you're going to need to work on that somehow to ensure that that's never
Oh,
possible.
we are keeping all of that secure. I
Okay.
mean, all of that, and the board is the only one that sees
Okay.
it, but
So
we're
then-
the government, so we got to make sure it stays secure. I hear what you're saying there.
So then the next part of this is also the locations that air carriers fly, and I'll use my, the company that I'm with Everett Air Cargo. We fly all over, but we also run those charter flights. And these registrations, that's not a typical location that we
Right.
go to.
So you wouldn't put it on
I'm
there. Yeah.
assuming we don't have to put those locations in.
I am too. I mean, that's the solution Gabe and I would work at. If any airport or any
It's more
runway
of
that
our
you go to.
scheduled destinations.
Scheduled
then.
destinations, yeah.
Okay.
So can you turn to the next page? This is what you're concerned about, right? Yeah. This was a request of our enforcement team who thought, well, we need to go inspect where the alcohol is. So I think we could, as long as we can maintain confidentiality, and that's very important to me, we can talk to the board about whether this is needed. I hate making promises that it's going to stay confidential. It's our obligation, but things happen. So it might just be best to take this off the form if it's going to provide for information the public shouldn't have. I'm not adverse to that because you're not a licensed premise. This usually applies when I go to a plane. As long as that door is open, you're a licensed premise. I can go in. If there's a drunken person, I can get that person off that plane. But your warehouses, since you're not a licensee, you're not a licensed premise. So that could be a solution. I want to move this meeting up, but we'll see. There was another hand. Okay.
Going back to intent, right?
Right.
Just keep alcohol away from a minor or somebody who's got a track record of problems.
It doesn't even help with that, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
When someone orders alcohol online or through the phone systems with the remote purchasing program, they have to provide their ID, the address has to match, all that information is collected by you guys.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? You mean when they apply for a written order through a package store?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
you're tracking all that and you're enforcing all that. Then that carrier or that
I know where
seller
you're going. Yeah.
is transporting it to the airline community to transport. Introducing the obligation for these guys to do a ramp signature and take on that ownership and liability hasn't done anything other than what he was saying. You're creating an illicit market that doesn't need to exist. This is a local community problem. If you have somebody who has a legal ID and is ordering in alcohol and giving it to minors, this will not do anything to stop that.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. I mean, what I'm hearing is the best solution might be the repeal of ASO 409-750.
If we care about people and you care about the effects and what you're doing, because there is a whole process involved. So that whole remote sale process is broken if that's what we're saying is requiring airlines to do signatures, right? So either create more liquor stores in the bush where they can come in with their IDs that don't exist, or take it off of Grant and Ryanair to be the police.
It doesn't help that I say I inherited this mess. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So my recommendation is just, how is this room put a professional voice?
So I think what we need to do is at that first user group meeting, make sure Senator Machicki, who's the architect of this bill, and probably, this is probably a compromise. He's a smart man. I don't think he's noticed all these ramifications. Get his adoption that this is not working, it doesn't achieve the goal, and then go to the governor's office and see if the solution is a repeal, then work the process that way or find a friendly legislator in Juneau. While that happens, though, we have a law that's still in effect. Yeah, and Brown Jug, you know, it's easy for them. They just go to a list and say Alaska Airlines, or it's going to impact them when there are carriers that won't take it to their customer. Which then I'm like, well, that's a good thing, but then that gets the secondary bootlegging market going. Sir.
So I want to kind of say, sorry, because
That's okay.
this is not yours.
Uh-huh.
This was done by the legislature, and what I wish you had was the sponsor letter that was sitting there from Pete Masici out of Kenai, who helped organize all this stuff, who is no longer in office, so going back into all this stuff.
But he cares about it, he really does. And he
What's
has,
that?
he very much cares about this
I'm
bill.
sure he
Yeah.
does,
Uh-huh.
but when that legislation went through, I'm betting that there weren't any of the people within this room that were tied into that.
Well,
And
I think for that
they
reason
dropped
I
the ball
said,
on that one.
there was no changing it. The deal was done. The recovery communities thought this was a fix to prevent kids from getting alcohol. And a last minute negotiation might have ended the bill. Oh, definitely, they're coming, definitely. Right. Tiffany Hall from Recover Alaska and Brawley, she's now an assembly person, but she used to work at Agnew Beck and represented those interests. Yeah, I want them, I mean, I'm assuming what the interest was. I want them in the room and saying, here's why we did this. If I'm misstating something, you need to hear from them. Yes, sir.
Another option could just be something on there stating that you will indemnify carriers of any legal activity.
The package
associated.
stores, the licensees?
No, just us. I don't care about them.
I mean, the package stores, no, they will indemnify you.
No, the law, the state. Nobody could sue us.
Oh, the state, oh, I see what you're saying, hold harmless. Hold
Hold
harmless,
harmless,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't
100%.
indemnify, but we could say, the state doesn't indemnify, but it could say you cannot be sued. It's
Yeah, I
really
mean,
hard to get the state to indemnify, I can tell you
I'm
that.
just saying,
Yeah.
they're not getting their booze, so.
But
they
it
might
would
as
be
well.
some kind of hold harmless clause that you couldn't be held, you still might have this obligation, but you couldn't be held civilly liable.
Yeah, and then you could also hold us harmless against fines, because you can't get all the signatures in those environments. You
Yeah,
literally cannot.
all of this, we're talking statutory changes. I like to think in three realms. One, anything we can do informally. I don't think I could say I'm going to not enforce this law. I don't have that authority. I stretched it a little bit with my understanding of how to enforce it narrowly. So that's one approach. The other is, that's immediate solution, right? The other approach is board guidance. I don't think the board has authority to say, you shall not enforce this law, but it could say, here's how we're going to limit it. The next step is there any regulatory solution to this mess? Regulations are harder to get through than statutes. And I'm not hearing a regulatory solution. I'm just not. And the fourth is a statutory change. So this is a lengthy process. Do you have a lobbyist in Juneau? No. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah. All right. I don't know who it might be, but I know Meyer Hutchinson represented the Brewers Guild, and who represented Char? I think you need someone with skill that I don't have, and it might be all of you because we need you. You know, it might be that simple. Another, all right. So, go ahead, sir. Right. Lack of enforcement of a reg doesn't involve liability because I am an attorney and I know what attorneys do. Yeah. A statute creates an obligation. It sets a standard for reasonable conduct. Breach of that reasonable conduct is negligence. Negligence supports damages. When I say I inherited a problem, it doesn't mean I'm not going to find a solution for it. We will. Altogether. When I say I inherited a problem, it's not me saying that I'm not responsible for it, so what, guys? It's not that at all. This is a statute that puts an obligation on me, our office. I have the obligation to follow it. So it is my problem, is my problem. And one, if I'm enforcing, I'm the responsible party, not someone who created this law. That said, my commitment is finding a solution that works. And if the purpose of the statute is to solve a social ill that cannot be solved through this means, then the statute doesn't work. That's kind of where I'm leaving after this discussion. I do want to hear from the recovery community. And the bootlegging point of requiring this, I don't think anybody, I don't think they thought about in Juneau that it's going to increase illegal sources of alcoholic beverages. Will, this is a great discussion. Did you have, I can keep talking, but I must be boring you all by now.
No, that's,
Yeah.
Can you hear me? There we go. No, that's everything for now. So we will be a part of that meeting in 2 weeks, roughly 2 weeks.
And we will do it by Zoom as well. So even if you can't make the room, we'll make sure it's open. And so working groups, it's better to have a smaller group just so you can exchange ideas. But I wouldn't mind if this first meeting had as many participants as you wanted, and then you can designate who you want to speak to the issue. It'll probably be held at the Atwood Building downtown, 550 West 7th. We'll try to get the downstairs conference room. If not, it sounds big enough. Look at this group. Yeah. Well, hopefully there's a room available, Yeah, we might look for a day that they don't have anything going, or our conference room, or Department of Revenue, anyone with a bigger conference room might work. So we'll look for a room that fits about 30 people if we can. Okay.
So stay connected with me. Yeah, Don, do you have a quick question?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. Right. I like that idea. And then so we'll have the representatives of your industry, Dana Walukowicz, the board chair, Diane Thompson, another licensee, Pete Machicki or his representative, whoever we can get, the recovery community, me. We'll get that scheduled, and we'll try to find a date that works. I just want to start the discussion. All right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Okay. This just teaches me how, yeah, but how important it is to have public input in legislation. I think a definite backroom deal, and I don't know about it, I'm just saying that, but if you guys didn't know about it and it created an obligation on you, there was a disconnect in that process, and government should be better than that. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Joan did not have to come here today, so she was very kind to come immediately when I asked. I just want to recognize that publicly. We appreciate it greatly. Thank you. We do. All right, why don't we do a 5